the big campaign question is coming up because you think of them as taking a lot of time and a lot of money. And there are a lot of ways now in marketing to spend less money and go faster, whether it's influencers, user-generated, quicker content. And so great, lean into how that world has changed. But I think what will not change for powerful brands is standing for something consistently. A campaign used to do that. Your story is the same. And now how are you going to stand for something consistently through faster, higher volume, agile content?
Welcome to the Backcountry Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Reyna Alishio. She is the head of marketing at Altra. And I'm also sitting down with Andy Ralston, the senior director of strategy at Backbone Media. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Well, on today's call, we're going to kind of dig into the campaign, dig into both the brand side and the agency side being represented here, and try to understand and unpack what went into the campaign. I want to understand your guys' approach, the strategy, the insights, and then how you kind of brought it full circle and brought it to life. Because I think there's some really cool kind of activation components that you've included that I think a lot of people can learn from. So I guess to kind of kick us off, your tagline is experience a new high. Where did that come from, and how did that kind of set the tone for what follows?
Sure. Experience a New High you should think of as a seasonal campaign. So we have an always-on brand campaign that is stay out there. But this campaign was built around the launch of our Experience collection of shoes, which has both road and trail shoes in it. Super big moment for us. Start of the summer, really important product collection. And, we were looking to do a campaign that could live and deliver what the brand is about and launch that product and live on through the summer. We wanted to intercept culture and connect with our consumers, and we are trying to pull the brand to a younger audience. So a couple things we knew about younger audience, 50% of young adults report symptoms of anxiety and depression, and they're willing to talk about mental health. So mental health was on our mind, the craving of social connection among young people, and running being both a solution to connection and mental health. And then you add in this final point that young people are actually doing less drugs and alcohol, and you put all that in the mix and Experience a New High delivered runner's high, mental health, name of the product, an emotional connection to the brand. So that's really what pulled the campaign and the concept all together.
Very cool. Reyna, was that a tagline that your team had developed, or Andy, was your team involved in actually writing the copy for that?
Yeah, that idea was developed by the creative team, at Altra.
Yeah, the Altra team came up with the campaign creative concept and the tagline. And it was really fun walking into their office, a few months before the campaign launch. And we came into the conference room at the Altra offices thinking like, what are we going to get? It's probably going to be kind of another like running shoe brand campaign. And when we sat down and received something so unexpected and so thoroughly researched and saw all the strategy and insights that Reyna just described that went into it, we were really surprised and really excited to receive this creative idea and get to really run with it. And we can talk in a lot of depth about how we kind of applied a lower C creative lens to how to bring it to life, while the Altra team came to us with this awesome creative seed of an idea to get us going.
Yeah, can you kind of summarize the extent of the campaign, all of the various touch points? Because there's some pretty cool ways that you activated this.
Yeah, we can go deep here, and it's a lot of different things, and it's really fun. And I think before we get into all the different pieces, I feel strongly that if we're really pursuing like a 360-degree super integrated campaign like we did here, that core kind of North Star strategic direction is so important to make sure that that's the filter through which we apply any potential tactic that we're going to activate on. And like Rena described, that core of the campaign was this intersection of wellness, mental well-being, physical well-being, and the feeling that you get when you're running and you experience that kind of overlap of physical and mental impact of the activity. And so that was what we really took and applied it to a lot of different potential directions at first. And if I can talk about how we kind of opened the doors to a lot of different potential things that we could do and then narrowed it down, I think that's also really interesting. We initially came to Altra with two broad campaign directions that we could go. One would go deep in really kind of off menu expressions of sensory experiences. So things like, like, should we do an art installation? Should we do like collaborations that really just like more than traditional advertising tap into a feeling and that overlapping and blurring of physical and mental emotional experience of running. The second was to really let the excellent creative that Altra came up with speak for itself and then put it in front of runners where they're doing their daily grind, where they're experiencing potentially those physical and emotional effects of their run. And we went with the latter, which I think was a really fun way to create impact and create this super integrated campaign structure. And we, just to give you kind of the laundry list of stuff, there was a deep influencer component with 21 creators that we worked with. We did a pretty substantial out-of-home imprint at the Denver airport that was geared toward capturing people who are coming into Colorado. Their first touch point, they're receiving Altra messaging about experiencing a new high with this amazing creative that their team produced. We also did a blending of virtual and real life activation through sponsored Strava segments that had a literal on the ground component of guerrilla style stencil out of home with quippy copywriting. So say you're on your way to your run at Wash Park in Denver. The Wash Park segment is sponsored. That'll pop up on your phone after you run the segment. And on your way to the run, you'll see a message on the sidewalk before you get into the park. So this fun blurring of virtual and real life. There was a product launch event. There was a Yoga on the Rocks sponsorship throughout the summer. This was a really cool way to extend from core run culture to the edges of that culture in a way that tapped into this idea of general wellness and general well-being. We know a lot of runners also do yoga, prize mobility, the feelings that yoga can give you. So in partnering with Yoga on the Rocks, we were able to really operate in that zone at the edge of this community and pushing into that central campaign message. There was probably other stuff that I'm forgetting, but those were the primary pillars that the Backbone team brought into play. I know the Altra team was also executing a broader digital campaign footprint, if you want to talk about that at all, Rena.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things. One is absolutely broader digital campaign, but also, we're pulling this all the way through to retail, making sure that we're in store windows. We actually leverage a lot of our key retail partners' ecosystems, so we're getting in their campaign system, in their emails, and um, retailers that kind of built. It was like, oh wow, that's cool. You're doing something that could be cool for us. I want a piece of that. So that was a really exciting component. I want to say one other thing about yoga, that not only is it an adjacent sport, but our message as a brand is a lot about foot health and your foot moving naturally and your toes splaying and being, if you go to a yoga class and they say ground your feet in all four corners, like that is what the ultra proposition lets you do, put you in a more balanced position. So I think just that overlap allowed people to unlock and say, oh, now I understand your story a bit better. And certainly bringing both media and content creators to Yoga on the Rocks helped them make that connection and make their story even stronger. So I thought that was a real nice learning as well.
Yeah, before we dig deeper, can you share kind of your breakdown of responsibilities? What did Ultra in-house manage and what did Backbone manage?
Altra really drove the concept. Like I said, we went to their offices, received a pretty well thought out, comprehensive brief with the creative concept, more or less baked in terms of the direction we wanted to go. So their team went deep on creative, on concepting, on the initial strategic vision behind the campaign. From there, Backbone took the reins with adding depth across really like a 360 integrated way to activate the campaign, beyond just traditional creative storytelling. And by that, I mean video, copywriting, photo shoots, all of that stuff was handled beautifully by the Ultra team, while Backbone was thinking about how do we take it out to more grassroots community touch points across Colorado? How do we amplify it with brand scale? And how do we get creative with all these different touch points that we can do to add depth and build on this wonderful creative idea that the Ultra team gave us?
Rena, can you take us back to some of the insights that help drove this? You were talking about mental health, you're talking about depression, you're talking about the need and the craving for in-person experiences and events. Um, as you were thinking about this campaign, like take me back to the steps that you took to try to understand your audience. What insights did you find as you were researching your audience, and what did research even look like? What does that mean?
Yep, yep. So some of that is syndicated research, trends that we're watching, trend-based publication, but we're also always out in the market in focus groups, talking to consumers in run clubs, interacting. So it's really kind of throwing that all together and looking for what is it saying and speaking to us. I think an important part of this moment too, and this is less on the consumer insight, but where we were as a brand is, we've just been pushing and really building into this more emotional connection, not just talking about shoes and products. We've been driving heavy in awareness, but it had been very much in a digital spend. And we wanted to break through in this in real life media arts, disruptive grassroots space. And Backbone had worked with our team on a different project, and we thought we did some pretty cool things together there. And so we're like, hey, we need a partner to unlock this. So taking consumer insights, leading to a good concept, and then saying we got to bring this concept to the world differently were a couple of those things that got us to where we are.
Yeah, I would add to that 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 the Ultra team did a great job communicating the foundational insights and the foundational strategy here. And then one of Backbone's, I think, really interesting spaces that we're able to occupy is combining real life on the ground experience with core pursuit based communities, in this case, the running community, overlaid on top of ways to scale that message through maybe surprising other insights about adjacent activities or routines that these runners or other communities might follow. We know there's a lot of training that takes place for summer ultras or for fall marathons. And so how can we tap into people's routines and running routes and the kind of softer lifestyle attributes that you wouldn't glean from just like data exported on a spreadsheet, but you do understand if you have people on the ground who are listening to these communities, part of these communities, and able to really embed. And obviously, the Ultra team lives and breathes the brand too. But I think the combined forces of Backbone with our reach in mountains at our Carbondale office and Denver at our city office and our decades of experience in the Colorado endurance sports community was a really great combination in order to like have one leading campaign insight and then also smaller touch points and smaller insights that could give more nuance to the campaign.
What was that one leading campaign insight, if you could summarize it?
It's hard to say it's just one thing. The one thing we know about runners and shoes is while runners are open to try new innovations, they also get really comfortable with a shoe that works for them. So we knew we needed to come with something provocative that was going to speak to them both about a functional experience and something emotional and culture that says, wait a minute, I gotta pay attention to that. And so just wanting to disrupt and say you should consider a different solution, that's where you get to this experience a new high and it builds on the other insights of mental health, being able to name that, craving that in real life connection so that it just starts to round out a lot of dots kind of circling in on this being the right space.
Hmm. Yeah, how much of a challenge is that as a running brand to get people out of their existing, perhaps non-ultra shoes if they're comfortable with them and they work and switch to a different shoe? Like, how much of an uphill battle is that? And how much can a campaign actually motivate or get someone to step outside of their existing shoes? Does that work?
Yeah. I mean, that is the challenge. What we know is when people try on Ultra shoes, they love the fit and there's an aha because it truly does feel different and delivers something different. So, if you can break through the sea of communication, open their minds, disrupt, you have that shot. And that was really one of the reasons to add the in real life component. Dopamine dispensary is like, wait, what's going on over there? And so I think that was why we were really pushing for something disruptive, a new space to play. And, our results showed that we did that. The engagement that we got in real life events, the search interest that we delivered this summer really showed that this was something that caught people's attention.
So as you look at the impact, how much of the impact was from the in-person activations and how much of it was through everything else? Uh, in terms of, I guess, maybe two factors, like impressions, but then also in terms of, I guess I'll say like the potency of those impressions, the quality of those impressions.
Yeah, I would definitely say that we now believe that the formula is the 1-2 punch of the broad reach, the scale, and then seeing you again in real life where I can connect with you more emotionally, experience the product, put product on right then and there. So not having those specific numbers in front of me, but that 1-2 is what's working for us, and we're going to continue that.
And I'll say on the influencer side, there's a pretty tangible impact there. Yes, it is an impressions number. We've seen, I think, reaching the 2 million impressions mark through 128 posts through the influencer component of the campaign. And that also has been split roughly half and half between influencers in the Colorado, specifically the Denver area, and then also a more national footprint on the influencer side. And that's both been thinking about influencers as brand storytellers, but also product storytellers. And so we are working with the Altra team to make sure that the more product-oriented influencer storytelling has a through line to paid media and making sure that we give that enough reach, make sure it has impact, kind of further down the consumer journey in the digital ecosystem. So there have been interesting ways of kind of connecting the dots between some tactics that are a little softer on the measurement side or harder to measure on through to really measurable outcomes that I think, again, thinking about essential pieces of a super integrated campaign, that handoff is really important. And I think we've been able to achieve some interesting things there with the Ultra team.
Mm.
Yeah, we're really looking to move the needle on awareness and search interest as a precursor to that awareness. One of the things we know is that if we look at Colorado search interest a year ago summer versus this summer, a year ago we had spikes based on different activations that were dispersed. And this summer we delivered sustained and increased search interest. So, really would attribute that to the activities being out there, speaking to you both at the airport and at Yoga on the Rocks. So, those numbers and then honestly sell through of the product and success of the product launch is ultimately what we're gaining for and that's going well as well.
Rena, you mentioned the 1-2 punch, so to speak. What's been your experience in the past with in-person and digital campaigns, and what have you learned? Sounds like this is a much more robust effort than you've done in the past. So what did you learn specifically? What surprised you?
Digital and paid lets you go a lot of places quickly at scale, and it takes more ramp up and thoughtfulness of how you're going to do in real life. But I think just in a world where you need to break through, you need to connect emotionally, people are craving in person connection, both with you as a brand. How do you behave? How do you interact with me? And then we're doing events where people are interacting with each other. So you get a secondary value there. So that's why I think the 2 are pretty powerful. We have a third component at play in the brand. It's also in real life. But while this is fun and it's on the road and it's in culture, we're also out there in pretty elite events with athletes, right? Adding that credentialing performance piece. So just another layer and a different kind of in person.
I Cole, earlier when I was giving you the laundry list of things that went into the campaign, I forgot to mention maybe the most important part. The Dopamine Dispensary tour was a major component of the campaign. It was a 12-stop tour, some overlap with Yoga on the Rocks, but also a lot of distinct touch points too. For instance, at High Lonesome 100, which is an event that Altra already had a major presence at, we had the Dopamine Dispensary pop up there. Coincidentally, the next weekend I was out trail running Hope Pass out by Leadville. I was coming down one side, the guy was coming up, and I saw a dopamine dealer hat out in the wild, and I was so happy, and I had to stop the guy and say, like, "Where'd you get that hat? What do you think of Ultra?" Just like a little field interview on the spot. But it was really cool to see the connection through to that core community through just that simple little touch point. The tour also was at different really interesting places in the Denver metropolitan area. So there's an upcoming event at Dairy Block. There was a major presence at Denver Pride, which was really cool to go again, kind of run adjacent, but inclusivity is a very important pillar of the Ultra brand. So making sure that we're not just catering to core run events and going outside that kind of first concentric circle there was really important. And like I said, there are 12 stops on this tour that are really interesting and added a lot of depth to the campaign.
I will
Yes.
add on some exciting news of what we're doing with Dopamine Dispensary. So throughout the summer, we're also looking at other opportunities to expand our in real life connection and moments. And we were able to secure a relationship with Diplo's Run Club, which is a great combination of music and run club, 8-city tour. And we have the Dopamine Dispensary showing up there. And I do think that their view for their event producers felt like Dopamine Dispensary felt like it fit right into the culture and the vibe that they wanted to deliver. So that's been a nice gift that keeps giving. And we had our first event in Philly and just tons of engagement. So our highest engagement events so far have been Yoga, Diplo, and the Pride Fest. So I think the learning there is lots of people with some connection and adjacency to run, but get the crowds, get the feeling of the moment, high energy location.
Yeah, and explain the dopamine dispensary. What is it?
Yeah, so playing off of, the dopamine part of it, dopamine's very much as a word in culture, whether you're getting it from sugar, your online scrolling, or truly in the runner's high. So people understand that that's a feel good moment, and that is what running and this connection delivers. So picture a van that you walk up and you have both our trail shoe and road shoe merchandised on the wall. People can interact, try on shoes, understand, get some munchies, get the cool running is dope hat, engage, take some cool filtered photos. So it's just kind of an excitement hub. And then you're drawing people in and they're trying on shoes. Maybe they know a little bit about Ultra. Maybe they are just curious and learning about Ultra for the first time.
I think it was really amazing to see that come to life. It was just kind of a small idea in some of the initial planning for the campaign. And then Backbone partnered with a event production agency called G7. And together with Ultra and G7, we were able to bring it to life in a really fun way where it really piqued interest. Like you see this thing across the street, it's like a big black trailer that says dopamine dealer on it or dopamine dispensary. And you're like, what is that? Is that like actually what I think it is? Or is that something else? Like I need to take a closer look. Then you come up and you see shoes in like little jars and on display, like you would see at a real dispensary, and you see like interactive elements for taking selfies. And it's just this really immersive experience that really served to draw people in more than like your 10 by 10 pop-up tent at an event, or more than really a lot of things that I've seen. Like it's no new tactic to do a tour with a trailer, but the creative idea on this one and the level of depth and thought that went into it, I think just the more you peeled away layers, the more interesting it was. And like Rana said, at those events where it wasn't necessarily your most core running event, but it was people who were interested in running and really receptive to the Ultra message, there were great connections with those people, both like qualitatively, but also getting people to scan a QR code and connect the dots there.
Hmm. So at the end of all of this, like what problem is this campaign solving for Ultra? If you could summarize that as simply as possible.
I mean, we are here to drive awareness and help you understand Ultra. So the fact that it could disrupt and catch your attention solved our awareness piece. And when we brought you into the trailer and you tried on shoes and heard a little bit about our story, now you understand us as a brand. So, take that down to the next level of supporting a specific shoe that really was our most approachable young adult shoe and getting that launched well.
So awareness and understanding, that was the
Awareness is the top of that conversation.
so for everyone who's listening who's like, man, I wish I had leadership who just could jump on board to a well thought out but kind of edgier idea. What sort of advice would you have when trying to share like these types of concepts with leadership to get approval? Is there anything that you've learned that might be of value for someone who's looking to take an idea upstairs to try and, you know, get the budget or get the approval?
Well, I mean, I think a key part is knowing who your brand is. Does your brand, with your voice, your personality, your consumer target, do you have permission to play here? So if you can check that box, you should have a good conversation. But if you want to sell beyond that, painting a picture of the landscape and competition and what it's going to take to break through and be disruptive, because you can look at a lot of running marketing materials and see we're talking about running and we're talking about it in the same way and we look pretty similar. So you start putting those pieces together and a yes is starting to formulate a little quicker.
True, but on the other hand, it seems like there's still a lot of friction sometimes when it comes to this type of stuff. Is that just are you just is Ultra just in a good place with a good team who understands kind of the value of taking, edgier stances?
I think we have great leadership. Our brand president that's willing to say, I understand what the brand is about, that's built a culture where it's safe to bring forward ideas. I think we have a VF culture that understands the role of an emerging brand. So I do think people matter in that. I'm painting the picture of how you bring strategy and selling to life, but of course, people and how they're going to receive that matter a lot.
So let's look at the general run category out there. I'm curious, like, what are you seeing about the run category? A lot of stuff feels similar to your point. What are some of the concerns that folks in the run category should be paying attention to? If you can speak to anything that you're seeing that you're like, that's intriguing.
You grabbed a couple things. Concerns, intriguing. I think everyone's noticing that running is also becoming lifestyle and a badge in that way, and that's certainly something that everyone's at least looking at. I think when you think about opportunity or concern, I think as we look to the future and growing running into the future, running needs to become a lot more inclusive because the future is. And so I think that is should be on the minds of brands and clubs, and I think it is. So those would be two big things.
I think the running space is also, and it has been for a few years now, becoming more and more social in a moment with screen fatigue, Zoom fatigue, things that I know I experience in my daily life, and we probably all do. The opportunity to connect through social running is really important. And on the previous campaign that we mentioned, which was a collab campaign between Smartwool and Altra, that was a real pillar of that activation, was tapping into social running throughout the winter, because it was a winter running capsule collection of shoes, like full body product assortment for winter running. So I think, and a lot of brands have already been doing this, tapping into social running in different respects, but finding the balance between running being a lifestyle brand, and to the extent that in some instances it's getting very fashion oriented and maybe a little bit more of a like super premium slash luxury price tag that goes with it, versus accessibility and really getting people stoked going out running. People talk all the time about running is such a simple sport. You just need a pair of shoes and you can be a runner. I think that remains true, and continuing to find ways to empower people to get out and stay connected in real life through that sport, I think will remain a pillar of the pursuit.
Hmm. Yeah. Here's a question that I've always had. Are campaigns something here to stay? I mean, they've been a staple of like the marketer's, tool for a long time now. As you look to the future, like what role do campaigns play? Could you see a world where they disappear and something else takes their place? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I think that's an interesting conversation for sure. Like, is there a world where there's just more volume of content and messages? Is there more of a breadth of what those are, and then you put gas on what's working? Are they all threaded together with the same core? Like, I think those are all things that probably all marketers are spending a little bit of time on.
If I can get into Backbone's kind of overarching strategic approach to things, I think it starts to express a point of view on that question, which is a really interesting one. We think of a three-legged stool, like a strategic three-legged stool, where each piece serves to prop up the other pieces. And those three components are brand, community, and performance. And at first blush, that sounds pretty simple, but it's actually a pretty dynamic interplay of a lot of different types of strategies and tactics. And so on the brand piece of it, that is going broad. How are we bringing people in? Community, fostering deep connections, deep roots, making sure we're always showing up in a way that's serving our most important communities. And performance is obviously connecting the dots from those other two pillars to driving revenue, to affecting the top line and the bottom line. And that trifecta is really important. Looking at the B and the C, the brand and community pieces of that, I don't think for most brands, other than the largest corporations in the world, the brand big reach, really like expanding and frankly elevating your spin. I don't think that piece can be always on for a lot of brands, especially in the active lifestyle space where you're not going to have huge budgets for always on brand push. And so I think that's where campaigns start to come into play, is if you think of performance, always on, you got to capture demand, you have to connect to revenue. And community, always on, you have to be nurturing your connections with your core consumer, whoever that is. Then brand, like kind of expanding your reach and going broader, bringing new people into your brand's world. That I think you kind of see as like a wave, and sometimes you're pushing and sometimes it's a little bit lower. And that's how we think of it with a lot of our clients, is what are the right moments to push on brand, to push on a bigger message. In this instance with Altra, we were brought in at a moment where they knew they wanted to push, they wanted to bring in a younger demographic, expand from their historic core runner. And I think that is in line with how we think about a lot of our client work.
Got it. So it really just comes down to budget and resources. I mean,
I think the big campaign question is coming up because you think of them as taking a lot of time and a lot of money. And there are a lot of ways now in marketing to spend less money and go faster, whether it's influencers, user generated, quicker content. And so, great, lean into how that world has changed. But I think what will not change for powerful brands is standing for something consistently. A campaign used to do that. Your story is the same, the same, the same. And now, how are you going to stand for something consistently through faster, higher volume, agile content?
hmm. So I think about like the Red Bull model. Like they seem to be very focused on just content, like brand content, right? And actually, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but it doesn't seem like they do a lot of like campaign led work. I know it's easy to pull Red Bull as an example, and they're not the most realistic brand to compare everyone else to. But if brands could just invest at that brand level consistently 365 days a year, um, what sort of results would you see if you could speculate? If you went the more like brand focused route consistently while still investing in those community and performance components rather than investing in community and performance consistently, but occasionally elevating brands every now and then. Like, do you have any thoughts on what you would see in terms of results? Would it be worth the effort if you could somehow pull it off?
Well, you not only need the awareness piece, you need you're relevant and meaningful. So I need to know you and have a sticky pathway to quickly intercept in your brain, but in a way I want to engage in. And Red Bull certainly has found something really relevant and a way to demonstrate their brand to their consumers. So they're doing that part really well. I think, like, if we just were dramatic about someone just had a bunch of money to spend with a message. Okay, I might know you and know your message, but do I care to take action on that? Is going to be the next piece.
And I think if we're thinking about the space that we all operate in, like active lifestyle, in some expression of that, there is some risk in diluting like Rena said, your relevance to the consumer who really is looking to you for an excellent product, an excellent experience. And if you over index, for instance, on like big, broad reach and trying to appeal to the maximum number of people, then I think you can risk some of that trust and relevance and authenticity in your core communities. So it's all about a balance. And I think what's interesting about the Red Bull example is Red Bull on first blush is not like not a product you would necessarily use mid bike ride or mid pursuit. Yes, it's a caffeinated energy drink, but you're more likely going to be consuming something that's more like electrolytes and a little bit more tuned to the pursuit that you're participating in. And the way I view the Red Bull kind of route is more leveraging the eyeballs that are on those pursuits rather than the people who are actually participating in those pursuits. So action sports, F1, other touch points where these active pursuits are getting broader impact as well, I think is more the direction that Red Bull goes there rather than a brand where your product is frequently or constantly in use in those pursuits. It's a bit of a hard thing to articulate, but are you following where I'm going with that?
Yeah, yeah. Different use cases, therefore, it's a different way in which the brand shows up, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, what's the value of in person these days? Because you look around at the industry, at least on the industry side of things, right? And there's a lot of questions about, well, where are trade shows going? Are they still a thing? And some trade shows are losing momentum, others are gaining momentum. But for the consumer side of things, like what's the value of in person? And it's easy to say like, oh, in person is valuable. But if you could go beyond that, um, what are your predictions?
It comes down to the goals of the brand and the goals of the campaign, really. And I think as we're seeing things like social running being ascendant and these community touch points that emerge with a pursuit like running and around a brand like Altra, I think it's a no-brainer for in-person, real life, on the ground touch points. That might not be the main priority for all campaigns, for all brands, for all product launches. So I think it's really about taking a step back and thinking, what's our strategic North Star? What are we truly trying to accomplish here? And how can either in real life or virtual or some combination of the two strategies and tactics really break through and accomplish that top line objective that we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think brands have been we've seen this. This is not unique or new, but brands that are bringing you an experience or inserting into your life and the fact that there's a brand message there is pretty secondary. So, this is a coffee shop. This is a hangout spot. We just happen to also have this brand, apparel, shoe, product, whatever. Um, that's offering something of value in a very just a great way that consumers can receive it. If that can be authentic to your brand's ecosystem, that's a very powerful way to show up. I think you said, what are the predictions? There will probably be some pendulums between, I'm craving in real life and I want to go down into the metaverse. Like, we're going to have all kinds of things happen along the way, but we can respond to that.
Yeah, I think about like a company like Snow Peak where they've got like some really interesting like integrated in-person components to their brand. And it just makes me wonder like our brand's going to be assuming that it does align with who they are. Will we see more of those types of things? Because it only seems like society is only going to become more disconnected.
I think you're right on that. I think consumers are looking for brands to show their authentic selves, and that's easier in an action in a world than it is on a screen. And so, if done well, I think it's very powerful. It does mean maybe connecting with fewer people more powerfully. So, to your right, like what are those little worlds you create?
What's something both of you learned working on this campaign?
So one of the components of this campaign that we were really excited about that I mentioned earlier was the intersection of real life, literally on the ground, guerrilla style stencils throughout the city of Denver and the Strava sponsored segments. And it was this really cool intersection of multiple touch points. And we were super excited about it in the sense that we wanted to reach this passionate community, show them that we know where their daily grind is happening, show them that hey, we see you, we understand you, we're here with you. We ended up getting some pushback from some runners in the Denver community who didn't like having um, those stencil out of home pieces around their running routes. And so while we were hoping this would be really a piece of the puzzle that would generate stoke and be really unique and really cool, we learned that that wasn't going to resonate with everyone in this community. And we, with Ultra, corrected the wrong. They were there was some perception that they might not be sustainable or that they might be permanent placements. They were chalk art placements through stencils, so they were both sustainable and temporary. They would have faded after 3 to 6 weeks, depending on weather. But we did end up removing those stencil ads because we wanted to respect the community. We wanted to respect the people who didn't end up appreciating that part of the campaign, which is totally fine. But that was a learning experience, especially something that we were so excited about on the Backbone side to execute and have executed in the past.
Thanks for sharing kind of the behind the scenes. Is there anything that we didn't talk about you want to make sure we can leave our audience with? Any other findings, any other elements to the campaign that you thought were interesting?
One more thing is this kind of through line here on the backbone side is what is creativity if you're not the creative agency necessarily? And I think this was a really valuable opportunity for us to step up and figure out how can we creatively express this idea, even if we're not the ones shooting the video or shooting the or doing the photo shoot or writing the copy. And the way that came to life was, I think, it made us much better as an agency too, in terms of, how are we thinking of, Rena uses the phrase media arts. How are we thinking about media and all these real world and virtual touch points in a sense where the medium is the message, in addition to just like kind of the brass tacks of media planning and like all the metrics that we're tracking. And it came to life in such cool ways with like the influencer campaign, where you end up with a bunch of kind of individual creative directors who end up believing in the brand, and they know their audience so well and they know what works, and they're going to create amazing content that none of our brains ever would have come up with, but we gave them the opportunity with a fun seeding kit and a really thoughtful brief to go out and really bring it to life in a really creative and also a different kind of way that both validates the brand and expresses the brand's message in a fully different light. So that to me was one of the most valuable pieces of the campaign on the backbone side, was taking a creative idea and saying like, okay, just because Altra came up with a great tagline and made an amazing video already and came up with this concept doesn't mean we can't still be very creative in the way that we bring it to life.
There was a lot of parts of this that came in fast, and we as a team have had to kind of say to ourselves, like, progression and action, not perfection. Get it out there, push, like start. And so I think that that's a good rally cry for people to remember in this fast-paced world, and, good partners that are excited and the teams rolling up their sleeves to make it happen. Good things can happen.
How long is this campaign gonna run? Where can Andy? I know you kind of gave a preview of where folks can find the Dopamine Dispensary. Sounds like you can find that online too, and figure out where it's going to be if you want to go check it out in person. But yeah, what's the legs on this thing?
Yeah, the Dopamine Dispensary piece of it rolls even into early 2026. Experience product collection does have an update in the first part of 2026, so don't be surprised if you see some evolution and thought. Not going to say it's going to be the same thing, but we'll keep the experience collection alive, is what I will say.
Awesome. Well, Rena, Andy, thank you for the time. Thanks again for kind of sharing behind the scenes and sharing some of your insights and the strategy and everything that went into it. I think this is obviously a pretty cool example of what happens when you blend a unique audience cultural moment and insights with some cool creative, and then with some even potentially even cooler in-person activations, and figuring out how to get this thing out into the world beyond the digital. So thanks for sharing. I wish you guys the best. I'm excited to see where this campaign takes Altra, and you set the bar high. So I guess we'll see what the next seasonal campaign looks like.
Great. Thanks. Campaign's
Thank you.
fun to be here today. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks, Cole.
Take care. Have a good day.
Okay. Bye-bye.
You too.